Click on the join channel here over at SubScribestar. So NFL to require teams to push social justice messaging in end zones for 6 straight season. Well, the short version of this is just turn off the effing TV and this all stops. So this is going to sound so obvious it's dumb, but these are examples of virtue signals, like the signs people have outside their house. And this is part of the humiliation ritual for the bread and circus addicted cattle who can't just turn off their deflection activities or displacement activities. The machine is telling you what the narrative is. We are always at war with Oceanians. A few people are saying woke is on the way out. Stop. That's copium because the person they elected is not doing anything, or he's not doing even a fraction of a percentage of what he's supposed to do. Woke isn't over. I mean, until you hear, like, if you start hearing a lot of helicopters, maybe we're on our way. So this is kind of mask off, and the phrases they have in the end zone are these kind of vague things like to, end hate or fight racism. It's like, what exactly does that mean? They're kind of the equivalent of the Google art. It's like a soda advertiser would use the same garbage to sell their corn syrup, or Marlboro cigarettes. Choose love. It's something the left says about how they talk about the gay community. They go, well, love is love. And like, what follows that is like, age just a number. Except, what does that really mean? Because how is mutilating children? How does that meet the elements of love is love? Or sterilize your kids, and tolerance and acceptance and diversity, and have a Coke and a Bacardi rum, because in this household we believe in repeating what the puppet masters tell us to, so we all have exactly the same signs on our front lawn. So the framing of something like end racism is that, well, first of all, it's even real in the first place, which might sound a little bit crazy at first, but start asking people to define terms that are just accepted as true. People discuss all these things, and not enough people are clarifying what exactly we're talking about, because otherwise we're just talking past each other. We're having two different conversations. So what their implication is that one group of poor little angels are the marginalized and oppressed victims of the horrible, mean words on the internet. And gosh, we sure haven't learned anything from the BLM and communist riots in the past 5 years, or the riots that have gone on for the past 100 years. And it's always how do we say this? There's a commonality, but it's never their fault, of course. It's not a narrative that they want to end racism against everyone, because that would not suit their purpose, and that would be the more inclusive argument. Something like what Gina Carano was talking about from The Mandalorian a few years ago, when she was being pressured to use pronouns, or she put like beep as her pronouns, and then she was showing a woman being chased, and she was advising everyone to calm down a little bit and don't turn on your neighbors, and that was just too much for the left wing, who I don't know what they interpreted. The thing is, if they hate you, they'll interpret it any way they want. So something as stupid as choose love or fight hate as these hot phrases. And I'd love to see the people who thought up these phrases probably look like you imagine them. It implies that there's an end goal of maybe different groups successfully living together who hate each other. And it's never even considered that people are kind of starting to awaken to the idea that, yeah, maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe we just don't need to try to go in that direction. Maybe we should go in the other direction and let, different groups of people have different ways of doing things. Why don't we just, let people do their own things in different areas, and people can kind of, there's no need to you do things that result in endless conflict. And they go, no, we got to push past the conflict. And you look at it and you go like, no, we don't. Why exactly would we want it? What benefit do we get? So they're vague on purpose, but they're directed towards maintaining a Marxist framing of oppressed, this structure. Because when they say something so vague as choose love, who do people subconsciously think it's aimed at? Why not a message to the folk in Chicago, Detroit, St. Louis, or something? Why don't they stop killing each other? Chicago, stop the homicide twice a day. You'll never see it. I mean, that would be friggin' hilarious. NFL, big on the screen. Chicago, stop killing each other. Stop the violence in Detroit. Like, yeah, you're not going to see that. The message could be about turning in criminals in your neighborhood, starting a neighborhood watch or something. Or the old terrorism standby where if you see something, say something from, 9/11. But they had to change that during the BLM riots that started really geared up about 5 years ago in our 2020 Summer of Love. That means if you see something suspicious, criminal activity, you call the police. But even at the time, people were scared of reporting their suspicious neighbors from a warm certain region of the world, who turned out were actually plotting terrorist acts, and then this was in California. They carried Pasadena or something. He knew that there was something off about the neighbors, and yes, they fit a certain mold. But it was like really vague. It was just gave him a funny feeling. So he didn't want to get canceled. So he couldn't articulate anything super concrete. He just didn't like the guy was coming and going at odd hours. Something was wrong. It was just doing things differently. So what happened was the couple, his neighbors, actually did carry out a attack, but the neighbor knew something was wrong, but he didn't want to get canceled for being racist. And the problem was he would have been canceled. So it's like in game theory, it's safer for him to just keep his mouth shut because the people who are going to be hurt are not him or his family. It's like, and if he gets canceled, nobody's going to start a give, send, go for him. Nobody's going to protect him. There's no protection for him. Like what is those consumer laws when corporate people report whistleblower laws and stuff. So it's like, it's just keep it safe, keep your mouth shut. And like, well, what does that create? Well, it just creates a low trust society. And look around, it's exactly what we have. So it changed to if you see something specific, say something specific. And some cities pass laws to punish people who reported a certain politically incorrect things as a matter of suspicious activity. In San Francisco or California in general, it was like anti-Karen laws. So, like predictably what happens, well, people just gave up on reporting crime because they didn't know what was safe to report. They didn't want to commit wrongthink and be canceled or even be very publicly arrested and have the DA issue. I mean, the DA would make an example of you if you said the wrong thing on a police report, which is being recorded, and they would just destroy your life. They would destroy your family's life. So you look at it and like, yeah, it's really just not worth it anymore. So crime skyrocketed, which was the goal the whole time, to give them the moral high ground to create a police state. They want centralized authority, federal police powers, because people will just be begging to stop the crime that they set the conditions in place to create the crime wave. So when you see militarized police, people will just be cheering that on. It's kind of the Wu Flu example, which was similar to the Star Wars prequel from 20 years ago, where the Emperor slowly gathered more power and just removed liberty. And they did that movie, I guess, to point the finger, I think, at George Bush or something, which is so stupid because now 25 years later, you look around and you're like, oh, but you actually kind of did it. And the reality is sometimes a suspicious activity is just the wrong sort of person who's walking around in an area that they don't belong in, which isn't even saying that isn't politically correct, because you constantly perform this risk assessment in your head of the probabilities of different groups' tendency to engage in, let's say, antisocial behavior, but none of that is politically correct. Just not even have the discussion, people will be looking over their shoulders like Russia in the 50s. But it's also objectively true. So the puppet masters started to control the narrative so that true things could not be said because they just labeled them, well, it's not politically correct and the truth is secondary, which is kind of the absurdity lined in the sand of getting absurdities to atrocities. The behavior around the Wu Flu was a great example of how quickly the media, government, pharmaceutical, and social media companies, which you should totally trust, of course, all work together to shut down the scientific community when the scientific community wanted to have an open discussion about this sort of thing, because what the big farm was doing wasn't science. It was something obviously much darker. That was the greatest wealth transfer in human history, and people just let that go, and nobody got punished for it. And part of it is that they're setting people up for the next Wu-Flu type of event. Basically, everything bad you can imagine your sociopathic leaders doing, they will do. Most of the conspiracy theories of government seizing control are going to come true because you saw how far they went over the past 5 years. Australia is a great example. They built camps, and no government official went to prison for that. When they talk about like microchipping people, this was a long time ago. And then you see like what came out over the past 5 years is, yes, you could put a subcutaneous like chip in your hand and scan it for credit cards and like all this kind of stuff. It's like, oh, it all actually kind of happened. They want people as completely controlled NPCs. So these NFL signs are similar to the signs people post outside their houses. The actual message isn't the message. It's more of a signal to people for what side you're on and to enforce the status quo that you're one of the good ones who commit good think. I mean by this, like, you don't see signs that say things like, race first, love your people, kill a commie or a globalist or Antifa, or, make sure you mag dump on a criminal breaking in. Or, like, that's how we treat criminals in this. It's a neighborhood watch area, and we mag dump on criminals. You don't see those kind of signs. Like, those are vaguely dog whistles. Like, don't trust the media, pharmaceutical, and government, which used to be left-wing beliefs, but now they're everyone kind of thinks it's a dog whistle for something. It's like, what? Why is that? What exactly is going on? So on the surface level, people think it's just a dumb virtue signal, but it's deeper than that. It's the machine doing narrative enforcement, delineating the boundaries of allowable thought. It's also related to the controlled ops, right-wing media, the Gateway Pundit, the Post-Millennial, PragerU, Daily Wire, and there's like a dozen of those type of media. Though I think in the Trump era they're not doing as well. You don't see them quoted as much. They were doing great under Biden, but when you're the opposition or even the pseudo opposition, it's tough under Trump. So part of the humiliation ritual is them presenting this anti-whiteism, and the burden is shifted to the viewer to decide to stop watching the cattle bred in circuses. I'm not hiding it. I'm not a fan of a sports ball, and people don't want to do that. They love their deflection activities, and I do too, though it's not sports ball, but I mean, at least I know it's like, listening to podcasts or something. But once you start naming something and you talk about it, it helps you move beyond it. Once you put on the sunglasses, you can never go back to watching the cattle distractions. The obese sports ball guy sitting on the couch has to turn off the TV and reject watching other men exercise. And it's a big deal because it's an admission that things are fundamentally different than the world they grew up in, and obviously things are much worse, and they're going to have to do something different than voting to change it because voting got them here. So it's easier to just keep watching the circuses and try to keep yourself from awakening. But the longer the consumer supports the circuses, the humiliation ritual continues, and it's only going to advance. They're participating in this gaslight globalist fantasy where football players kneel to maintain a fiction that their tribe was being unjustly harassed when cameras show that is not so much the case. But it's not politically correct to discuss that, so people join in this years-long virtue signal that deflects away from real issues in America of antisocial behavior. So it just continues because no one will actually address it, and even the platforms are controlled by, like Google and whatnot. Why do you think they bought YouTube? YouTube was a freer speech site, so Google gets in there and go, hey, this site's growing. People are really discussing issues. We're going to have to get control of this and maintain that it's all like unboxing videos and kittens playing and stuff. And women and soy boy liberals are totally on board this kind of fantasy narrative, but the guys who watch sports ball think of themselves somewhat differently because they live vicariously through the sports. They signal that the players on the field are the people to be looked up to, and their daughters and family see that dad looks up to the people on the screen running around getting exercise because they take his attention away from them. And it's really, you should be like playing with your kids, not watching TV for hours at a time. That blows my mind. It's insane that professional sports has an audience at all. I can understand high school sports because that's a part of being connected to the community. And in high school sports, you attend them in person, you're talking to people. That's completely different because professional sports is like just the McDonaldization And I noticed this when I was a young kid. It's like they go from city to city and they get traded, and you're like, these people they're not from here. There's no city to be connected to. It's like this fantasy of sports that were a thing in the 40s, 50s, and 60s maybe, but that just all ended. It's just this old image of how things used to be, and that is completely gone. And sports might have started even kind of neutrally with they were just playing sports and doing a little bit of advertising, and then some would have like flag waving, a little patriotism or something like baseball. But that era is dead as the demographics change. America, and that's kind of the next video is the Cracker Barrel thing. One of the other reasons why it's changing is because the demographics of the country are obviously turning browner and browner, and like Mexicans being patriotic, it doesn't really make sense to them, because they're coming from like the patriotic. They'd be patriotic for a different country. They just it just doesn't click for them. Anyway, so these guys are by watching TV, they're endorsing this woke anti-white messaging, which are just slowly going to increase into more globalist mask off stuff. They've been doing this for 6 years. They're just going to keep ramping it up a little bit, and you just keep the audience on board, because now they have like so much sunk cost investment. They've been watching it for like decades, and they're adults, and it's a big deal, I guess, to turn off the TV. So if they're watching it now while the NFL is laughing at them, I mean, there are terms to describe people who enjoy a humiliation fetish. The globalists love seeing how far they can push it, and to kill it, all you have to do is stop watching it and just go outside, get your own exercise. The image of the 250-pound TV watcher cheering on the people who hate him, that are owned by these team companies, these corporations who also hate him, with the woke messaging on the field is absolutely insane to me. And if you stop watching it, well, one, it kills the industry. And it's also the first step to leaving the matrix, to seeing this. Because once you see it, you can't really continue to watch it. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys all next episode.